Well, thank you very much. It's a real pleasure to be here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hopefully lay the groundwork of the way I sort of see some of the challenges that face nephrology. It will be a little bit more physician-focused. I won't talk too much about some of the interesting specific aspects of the workforce crisis, and Bruce Molitoris will do that after my talk. So I'm going to talk in more generalities. Hope that it's useful to you. So let me see. Should I?
The keyboard's over here.
Okay.
She's there.
Oh, great. Okay. All right. Okay. So first, a disclaimer. You know, predictions are dangerous, particularly about the future. A lot of things have been attributed to Yogi Berra. I'm originally from New York, and I know Yogi well, not from the ball field perspective. So how things have changed a little bit, and thinking about when I was in training in the 70s and compared to 2010. Very ambitious physicians would go into nephrology. Now, as you'll hear more of from Bruce, we have trouble attracting physicians. Things were different. When I did my nephrology training, we had 2 fellows in a 1,000-bed hospital. Now we have 5 fellows in an 800-bed hospital. That also relates to the turnover in the context of patients. So it's not that we were so much more efficient back then, but also patients stayed around for their MI a lot longer, or for any other medical condition a lot longer than they do now. We had no computers. Computers rule today. We used a telephone. Now at the Brigham, at that time, we had 1 area code. Now at the Brigham, we have 2 area codes, believe it or not. Across the street, it's a different area code. So even the telephones have gotten more complicated. But clearly, email and internet are entirely new. Physicians, triple threats ran hospitals, and now administrators run hospitals. And so it's a different dynamic. Whether one's better than the other is not a value judgment, it's just different. The academic model of research, teaching, and clinical care was an integrated one. And now researchers and clinicians are separate. There's hospitalists, and people are subspecialized in different areas and don't talk as much to one another. We had textbooks. Now we have UpToDate and Google. Nobody uses a textbook anymore, it seems. There was a focus on fluid and electrolyte and acid base and acute kidney disease that got most of us attracted to nephrology. And now the focus is on chronic kidney disease and end-stage renal disease. And for many people coming up who don't understand the value of these areas, it just doesn't seem as attractive to deal with chronic disease as it does acute disease. There was little dialysis, although dialysis was clearly used. Now dialysis, in fact, dominates. In some ways, a success story, and we're keeping the patients alive longer. We had the idealism of Kennedy, and now we have sort of OJ and 9/11 and Tea Party and a lot of other things that have affected this Y generation in ways that are very different than we were affected in the 70s. There's local decision-making and little bureaucracy, and now, as I'll show you a slide, there's an enormous regulatory bureaucracy and educational bureaucracy. There was little racial, gender diversity, but more, I would argue, more socioeconomic diversity at that time. Now we have much more racial, gender diversity, but I wonder about the fact that whether we're sort of retreating in terms of socioeconomic diversity given the costs of education and things like that. So what are some of the challenges? Balkanization of medicine, in particular nephrology, with their turf battles, the regulatory quagmire, the bankruptcy or coming bankruptcy of CMS, revolutions in physicians in training, the workforce clearly is sort of, it's in the middle here, maybe shouldn't be in the middle, but it's really the whole, everything we're talking about is really the groundwork for the workforce issues. Balance of patient need with work-life balance. the national healthcare agenda, the future of research and its funding, and distrust of the industry-medical interface. This piece, I'm going to mention a few things about all of these, except I'm not really going to go into number 9. That's a whole other discussion. So what about the Balkanization of nephrology? This, I think, is a threat, and it's confusing to some extent, representing opportunities to some trainees, but confusing to others. You know, we have consult nephrologists, dialysis medical directors, transplant nephrology, geriatric nephrology, ICU nephrology. And then we have a group practicing nephrology. We all practice. That's why I put it in quotes. But this is really meant to sort of imply the community practice of nephrology. We have onconephrology, which is a new one. We have clinical investigators and basic investigators. And to be more positive, and I'm going to throw in some countermeasures here. I use the term countermeasures because I've had a long experience with the space program, and that's the key term there. You know, you have challenges in space and you have countermeasures, and they work on countermeasures. And so, you know, we need a strong professional organization which tries to serve the needs of these groups and provide a forum for education, communication, workforce, and advocacy. And we like to think that the ASN is that group. It's not the only group, but we like to think we serve that function. Now, here in the context, the Balkanization of medicine. And I won't go through all these terms, but you know, there's a breakdown in all academic medicine, academic internal medicine, internist in practice. This is a very difficult regulatory and organizational minefield, I would say, to sort of navigate. And again, getting to the point of being at the table or being part of the menu, which I think is a good lead up to a lot of this, we need strong organizations which can interact with these groups and represent the interest of nephrology. And again, that's one of the things that we try to do with the American Society of Nephrology. Okay, what about the regulatory quagmire? You know, these are well known to directors of hospitals and healthcare systems. What one has to deal with is very different than it was 30 years ago. And you know, you can go through, this is actually Sam Thier's slide, 3 removed. I'm not sure he would recognize it, but his name is still on it. And Sam Thier used to run the partner system. And you can see all of these different organizations, clearly centers, the CMS here, hospitals, feed back and forth with all these different players in the system. It's extremely complicated. So that, you know, this is sort of reminiscent of some computer diagrams, but people tend to understand, believe it or not, computers more than they can understand these interplays. And again, one needs, as a countermeasure, hopefully organizations that can represent the nephrology interests to be able to be at the table with many of these groups. In terms of training, it's almost as bad. So these are the different groups that see as their roles something to do with training. And you know, there's some of them you'll recognize, the MCAT, the USMLE, the ACGME, and many of these groups seem to get established. Somebody had some good thought about why it would make sense to establish them, but then they're there, they have a board of directors, they have to continue to sustain themselves, they increase their fees, and along the way, nobody really understands why they're imposing new rules on us. And you can't seem to get to those groups to actually influence the decision, or at least the perception is that you can't. All of the boards, as far as I could tell, are overlapping, so you never really have a sense, and certainly as an individual physician or nurse or any healthcare provider, of how to deal with all this, and even in the educational context. And again, one of the things that ASN tries to do is to pick out which ones are most important to deal with and try to influence it, try to be at the table in these discussions that are critically important. Okay, so CMS is going bankrupt. The first manifestation of this is bundling. Has to have an effect on workforce. Perhaps this aspect hasn't been seen yet, but I won't go through the details but they basically, with bundling and dialysis treatments, there's a particular amount of money that's going to be given. Here, the 2011 base payment per treatment. Of course, they introduced that. That's going to cover all intravenous drugs. That's obviously going to affect things like ESA use. And then the oral drugs will be added in 2014. And immediately, then there's a reduction, a 3.1% transitional funding cut. Okay. Well, this is how much they decided. It was really going to cost. This is unadjusted. There are some adjustments in here that can alter this a bit, but immediately there's a cut. There's also a quality incentive program, which makes us, as I'll show on the next slide, the first subspecialty to really have a sort of pay-per-performance aspect to us. So nephrology is clearly a target for CMS. It's understandable. It's a carve-out. It had an important influence on the costs that CMS sees. Okay, so here's Representative Pete Stark, proponent of this. Current payment system for dialysis services creates incentive for over-provision of certain drugs, which can have detrimental health effects on patients. So clearly, this is all of those of you who have followed this. This is a direct effect of what's happened with the erythropoiesis stimulating agents. One could argue, and this is an opportunistic movement on the part of Congress to control costs, and this won't be the last. So the dark side of this, in terms of people thinking about it, and this is a negative perspective. I'm going to try to be a little bit positive. I hope more than just a little bit, because you don't need to all hear doom and gloom here. All IV antibiotics will be administered in the hospital. It will increase length of stay. So hospital administrators are going to be affected by this. Patients will receive ESAs and possibly IV iron in the hospital. This is a way around the system. Patients will be transfused with red cells in the hospital. And nephrologists will be faced with either therapy that's needed or let the dialysis unit go bankrupt and their patients go to the hospital ER. So these are important issues that are affecting the way nephrology is moving. We have these quality incentive programs. We're the first, I believe, and this relate to keeping hemoglobin between 10 and 12, and keeping the urea reduction ratio significant, so getting at the whole adequacy of dialysis. There's a 2% holdback, which can be earned back, and nephrology is leading the way in pay for performance. Okay, but what about the future? Right, this is just the beginning. So will they combine Part A and Part B payments? Probably that's going to be on the table in a few years. CMS has given a clear incentive for facilities to make home therapies available to more patients. We're going to see a lot more of this. Peritoneal dialysis that's not very popular in general, it's all of a sudden going to be popular. And some of that popularity is going to be financially driven. Home hemo will also be more popular because it's financially beneficial. So what's the countermeasure here is to work with CMS and Congress on policy decisions and rule writing to protect the interest of kidney patients. And this has been a major movement on the part of the ASN to get into the public policy arena, and I'll come back to that a little later. We are being listened to, and I think that's to the benefit of all of the practitioners, and again, we'll come back to that. All right, the other thing, which is clearly the case, is that if you look at the public funding of medical education, these are some numbers, and they're dwarfed by the Medicare in yellow here. So Medicare, we're dependent on our whole educational structure on Medicare. So we really don't want the system to go bankrupt. And yet in the way it's moving, something's got to give. Okay, then revolutions in physicians in training. This is sort of, generational differences. The workforce and balance of patient need with workforce work-life balance. And I think that, again, Dr. Molitaris will talk more about this. I'll just have a few slides. So what's different here? Physicians in training must understand medicine, which expands daily, master 6 competencies that are new. They're new in the sense of being codified, and they've introduced a whole infrastructure to monitor this. It's not new. They're not new in the sense of physicians in 1970s also had to be competent in medical knowledge and professionalism and these other things. They didn't have to be so knowledgeable in systems-based practice. But so there are some additional things. The SBP here is systems-based practice. The ACGME has limited the work week for residents and fellows to 80 hours. Other countries average 48 to 56 hours. So things we could project might move in that direction. Medical school debt is 4.5 times higher than in 1984. And has increased 53% since 1998. For residents, the monthly payment on a $155,000 loan is 48% of pre-tax income. Faculty and physicians in training exhibit generational differences. So what's the countermeasure? Tailor education, communication, and encourage participation of all age groups. Large workforce initiative, which Bruce is going to talk to you about, and more funding going to medical students. Clearly, there's an issue here. Medical students see the debt of $150,000 as being a significant one, as many of us do, but clearly more significant when you're just coming out of training than perhaps when you have a mortgage that's much more than this 5 years later. Okay, the National Healthcare Agenda, which we've already talked about a little bit. But one of the big things that are on the horizon are these accountable care organizations. And these are not well defined at this point. They're likely not to be subspecialty focused. It will behoove nephrology to get out ahead, again, this issue being at the table, because here we could clearly get eaten. To get out ahead and work with managed care organizations and hospitals to help set these up, so that care for kidney patients will not suffer and nephrologists will maintain prerogatives in this care. Key components are management of costs and outcome and assumption of risk. Problem is that this has been tried before and failed in various capitation models. So how do we go into this? Hopefully we're at the table, and this is almost a local thing. I think it actually is primarily a local thing. We have to start talking about this. I know the Mayo Clinic has a big initiative to anticipate ACOs, and so here's something that I think it's reasonable to try to get out ahead of, begin to talk to the likely players, the hospitals in particular, and the other subspecialties and the primary care physicians, because this is likely to be a primary care-driven initiative. Or led initiative. And here's healthcare reform. And this is a diagram of what was necessary to come together for the healthcare reform bill to be passed, whatever you think of the bill. But there were 156 separate agreements that had to be forged. So what can we do? Well, we can have a strong public policy agenda and collaborations with other professional organizations and advocacy group. We absolutely need this as a field, and this is something that the ASN has been doing over the last 5 years and has actually right now gotten to the point of being recognized in Congress as being probably the major player for nephrology, recognizing that KCP, the Kidney Care Partners, is a broader organization, but includes a lot of industry, whereas the ASN is more focused on sort of the academic, practitioner, patient side. Okay, so again, the budget situation is dire for federal and state governments. NIH is at a crucial juncture. After doubling, then things leveled off a bit, but then we had the stimulus bill, which we benefited from. Now we've hit the hard landing, and you all know this is something that makes everybody very anxious. The Medicare program is projected to be bankrupt by 2017. There seems to be a reverse correlation between quality and spending, whether you believe that or not. That's what the public or the legislature thinks. And as I've said before, medical education is clearly dependent on Medicare funding. Okay, so the funding of research, I won't say too much more about this except for this one slide. I think coming down the road, things are changing in research. And we have to adapt to an emphasis on big science and centralized structures. This may be good or bad, and it may be a phase, but nevertheless, it seems to be something that is being focused on. Fortunately, not too much at the NIDDK, but in general, this does tend to be more of a focus. And one could argue there's some positive things about this. We've got to develop partnerships, recognizing that research is not silo-based across divisions and departments, as well as across the country, to identify new funding sources. We've got to recognize that research is a public activity due to the interaction between science, politics, ethics, and money. And so it's not just our own labs and what we're doing inside the lab. It really is more of a public activity. They support us, and they expect more of us. Target approaches to preserve the physician-scientist, and again, that could require a whole other talk. All right, so I'm going to have now about 5 slides, and I'll try to end on time here, which just talk a little bit about what ASN is doing in a positive way, I think, we think, in the context of these issues. Here's the mission statement: leading the fight against kidney disease by educating health professionals, sharing new knowledge, advancing research, and advocating the highest quality care for patients. This is the membership. So it's actually, I think by this metric, it seems like our community is recognizing the importance or the value of being a part of the organization. So we're pretty proud, and we're constantly looking at this. There are initiatives now to go out well beyond physicians. We're clearly beyond physicians here, but to nurses and to PharmDs as a first step, and actually we're going to have a nurse and a PharmD on a program committee next year. Ron Falk has done that. He's the president-elect. So there's an educational initiative that really has been at the hallmark of the society. The annual meeting has been the real sentinel point for the society. There are things like Learning Center, there's renal weekends. The computer, at the site, you'll see many, many more opportunities for education if you go to the site. There's communications, journals, JASON, our oldest journal, and CJASON, Clinical Journal of the American Society of Nephrology. We have now sites on YouTube and Twitter and Facebook. We have a number of podcasts. We're trying to figure out, with Kidney News is also new, and we're trying to figure out ways to target this communication function to different groups so that the natural affinity groups will tend to come together. A major effort in public affairs and public policy. There was no public policy arm of the ASN when I joined council 6 or 7 years ago. And now, as I said, it's really recognized on Capitol Hill. We were there on Capitol Hill last week. We'll be there again for a full day in the early part of May. And then there are a number of member services, grants, committee, advisory groups, awards, travel support, although our budgets are limited. And as I said, inform policymakers about these important issues: patient care, research, education, and administration. So again, in patient care, reimbursement issues, quality issues, public health, and access disparities. In research, the various aspects of research. In education at all levels, students, residents, fellows, and continuing education. And then at an administrative level, practice, division, fellowships, and workforce. Some of the policy initiatives, I won't go through, I don't have the time, but essentially I've named them already on the kind of issues that we've talked about are all on the agenda for dealing with policymakers. And then the last thing is we've decided as a group, reinforced most recently by Kidney Care Partners, where they also decided independently that a major focus has to be on raising public awareness of kidney disease. Why do it? Because we need to. 1 in 9 Americans have chronic kidney disease. The NIH funding per person living with disease, okay, is down here. You can't read it, but this is kidney disease at the lower level. This is cancer at the highest level. Okay, and so we're doing something wrong if we want to get the public to help us get more funding in all of these activities. We need to the public needs to know about the importance of kidney disease. The risk, the kidney profile, particularly among patients with higher risk, underrepresented minority groups, particularly at risk, as you all know. And then we've got to sort of transfer our knowledge into practice and build an interest in kidney disease among groups important to the future of nephrology. Okay, so we've, as an organization, ASN has come a long way, hopefully to help us more effectively as a community deal with issues, in particular right now, the one we're talking about, the workforce issues. Okay, so the future. In a bundled world, there'll be a creative tension between the nephrologist and the provider, the dialysis provider. There will be some kind of transitional model, such as an ACO, which will force collaboration to gain efficiencies. We will be forced to rethink care delivery models and incorporate more nurse practitioners, physician assistants, pharmacists. We've already heard from Dr. Smith about that, and this is only a subset of the group. Nephrologists will do more procedures, and interventional nephrology will grow. We'll start doing our own fistulas and ultrasound studies. We'll captain a multi-component team to care for an ever-increasing population of patients with kidney disease. We'll create new ways of increasing our workforce by devoting more of our attention to medical students, and I think Bruce will talk about that. And the public awareness of kidney disease will grow and will result in increased resources for care and research. The future. The trouble with our times is that the future is not what it used to be. All right, this is a French poet, and the last thing is the best thing, however, on a positive note, about the future is that it comes one day at a time. So, thank you. Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Bonventry, and we'll move on. I think it's very encouraging to hear. We need, if we're going to have the influence and build nephrology into what it can and should be, we're going to all be needing to work together. The different groups from nursing, PharmD, as we've heard, physicians, assistants, the whole group.